It began on a quiet road under a pale gray sky, the kind of morning that hides its warnings behind stillness. Emma was 9 months pregnant, her hands resting protectively over the life she was about to bring into the world. But within hours, that fragile calm would shatter. Her husband's choices would turn love into betrayal, safety into fear. What followed was not just the story of a woman left alone, it was the story of how she rose again, stronger than anyone ever imagined. The seatbelt is digging into her shoulder. The dashboard clock shows 4:17 p.m. Emma's breath comes in short, measured bursts, the way the nurse taught her in prenatal class. Her palms are slick against the leather. A slow warmth spreads under her thighs. She looks down and sees the dark flower of moisture unfolding through the fabric of her dress. The first contraction grips her like a firm hand. She presses her lips together to stop a cry that wants to escape. "Mark," she whispers into the empty air of the car. There is no answer. Wind hushes across the windshield. Another contraction rises, peaks, and ebbs. She reaches for the door handle with trembling fingers. Cut to black. Title: He left me while I was giving birth, but fate brought justice. 2 weeks earlier, the morning light in Bellevue is calm and almost kind. The Carter house sits at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac where maples lean over the street like watchful neighbors. In the kitchen, a kettle sings. Emma stands by the counter, one hand resting on the curve of her belly as if it were an anchor, the other stirring oatmeal in a pot. She moves without hurry, her motions careful, precise. The countertops are clean, the fruit bowl full, the calendar on the refrigerator dotted with pastel circles around a date that is coming closer every day. Mark enters with a tie slung over his shoulder and a phone glowing in his hand. He is clean-shaven, his shirt crisp, the lines of his jaw set with the determined expression of a man who is already running late. He does not look up from the screen as he speaks. "They moved the deadline again," he says. "If I do not close 2 more accounts by Friday, the bonus is gone. If the bonus is gone, my team misses the quarterly target. If my team misses the target, I am the problem." Emma turns off the flame and slides a bowl across the counter toward him. "Eat a little," she says. "You will think more clearly with food." He pockets the phone, lifts the spoon, and tastes. His face does not change. He takes another bite and sets the spoon down. "My mother's lasagna always had more flavor," he says, as if he were remembering weather from a different city. She says seasoning is about confidence. "You cannot be afraid of salt." Emma folds the edge of a dish towel. She takes a slow breath and then releases it, with the same calm she teaches her second-grade students when they are learning to count to 10. "I will add more salt next time," she says. Her voice is even. Her eyes move to the window where the sky is a pale, innocent blue. Mark glances at his watch. "I will be at my parents' place Saturday," he says. "Dad needs help with the dock. Mom says the boards near the water pump have started to warp. She worries he will slip." Emma nods. "We have the appointment with Dr. Patel on Saturday morning." "I will reschedule," he says. "It is a routine check. You can go without me." She runs her thumb along the rim of the bowl. The oatmeal is cooling. The kettle has fallen silent. "The doctor asks about the birth plan," she says. "It would be good if you heard it from her." "I will catch up," he says, and the words fall to the floor like coins that miss a pocket. He kisses the air near her temple, a gesture that looks like affection from a distance. The front door opens, then closes. The house holds its breath. When the sound of his car fades, Emma stands for a long moment in the quiet kitchen. She places a hand on her belly, and the baby answers with a slow turn that feels like a wave. She smiles, a small, private smile, as if someone has told her a secret. She washes the bowl, dries it, and sets it back in its place with the care of a curator in a museum. The rest of the day arranges itself around her. She folds tiny onesies and sorts them by size. She wipes down the nursery bookshelf and places picture books in a gentle gradient of color. She pauses by the window where the maple leaves tremble, and she lets the afternoon light warm her face. Then she sits at her desk, opens her laptop, and checks the list she keeps in a tidy document titled "Welcome." The list is simple: car seat installed, pediatrician chosen, overnight bag by the door. She adds a line: "Practice breathing." Another line, remember to eat. She adds one more, call Sarah to thank her for the lemon bars. She likes the act of writing the items almost as much as completing them. It is a way to turn the unknown into a sequence of steps she can carry out with dignity. That evening, Mark returns as the light thins to a pale ribbon at the edge of the sky. He sets his keys in the bowl by the door. He hangs his suit jacket straight, then crooked, then straight again, as if the line of the sleeve could control the shape of the day. At dinner, he describes numbers and forecasts. He speaks of a client who never answers on the first call because he wants to seem important. He speaks of a team member who is too cheerful for a Wednesday. He drinks water as if it were a task. Emma listens. She asks questions with the patience of a teacher in a classroom where children talk over one another. She asks, what would success look like this week? He says, 2 contracts. Clean signatures. No renegotiations. She says, what is within your control? He says, not enough. He smiles in a way that looks like a wince. When he mentions the weekend again, the room cools by a few degrees. Mom is making lasagna, he says. She says I am too thin. Emma sets down her fork. Your mother is kind to cook, she says. We also have the hospital bag to finish. We have time, he replies. You are strong. You are not sick. Pregnancy is not an illness. There is nothing to argue against in those sentences and everything. She nods once, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement that the conversation is finished. He looks relieved. After he falls asleep on the couch with the television murmuring and the remote half hidden in a fold of the blanket, Emma stands at the threshold and watches him for a moment. His face in sleep is younger and softer, the face of a boy who has just come in from the lake and is not yet ready to explain why his clothes are wet. She turns off the television and covers him with the blanket. He stirs and whispers a name that is not hers. She cannot tell if he says Mom or Ma. She smooths the blanket once and leaves the room. The lamp in the small study paints a circle of warm light on the desk. Emma places the camera on its tripod and checks the frame. She sits. She presses record. For a second, she just breathes, letting the red dot blink her into presence. Good evening, she says, and her voice carries the careful softness of a lullaby spoken before a baby exists to hear it. I am 39 weeks today. The house is quiet. The maple tree outside the window moves like a person who does not wish to be seen. She holds her hands together in her lap. I have been thinking about patience, she says. I have been thinking about how love can be a room where both people wait for the other to speak first. She smiles, but there is a brightness in her eyes that is not light. Sometimes love feels like silence. She pauses. The sound of the refrigerator hums. Somewhere a car door closes. She continues. I made a list today. It is a list that makes the unknown feel less enormous. Car seat installed. Pediatrician chosen. Bag by the door. I will add one thing tonight. I will add the courage to ask for help when I need it. The words settle across the desk like a shawl. She presses stop. The room feels larger after the small click. She lowers her hands to her belly and speaks without the camera listening. We are almost there, she says. I will be ready. She stands, moves to the hallway closet, and takes down a charcoal duffel bag from the top shelf. The motion is careful, balanced. She carries it to the bed and sets it down. She unzips it and places things inside with the deliberation of someone packing not only for a hospital stay but for a crossing. A nightgown with buttons. Slippers. A soft blanket. A folder with insurance papers. A small envelope with cash and a list of emergency numbers. She adds a hair tie, a lip balm, and a photograph of her parents taken in the sun on the day they taught her to ride a bicycle. When she is done, she zips the bag and carries it to the front door. She places it on the mat where the morning light will find it first. She returns to the kitchen, opens a drawer, and takes out a small pair of scissors. In her wallet, behind the health insurance card and the grocery receipts, there is a secondary credit card printed with her name. She holds it for a moment, then slides the scissor blade through the plastic with a clean, decisive motion. The two halves fall into her palm. She places them in an envelope, writes "closed" on the front, and sets the envelope in the back of the desk drawer. In the quiet that follows, She does not feel triumphant. She feels calm. She feels like a person who has adjusted a picture on the wall so that it finally hangs straight. She returns to the study and opens her list once more. Her pen is steady. Under the last item she writes, in neat letters, checklist, delivery day. She makes bullet points. Phone and charger. Insurance folder. Infant car seat base. Contact Sarah. She underlines the word contact once. Then she writes one more line, careful and exact. I will do this my way. She closes the notebook. The house breathes again. Outside, somewhere beyond the maples and the cul-de-sac and the calm, a storm is knitting itself together. Emma turns off the lamp and the warm circle of light folds into darkness. She lays a hand on the doorknob, listens, and hears her own heart answer like a steady drum. The kettle on the stove ticks as it cools. The duffel bag waits by the door like a quiet promise. Emma moves through the darkened hall with the balance of a dancer who has chosen her steps. In the living room, Mark shifts on the couch, sighs, and settles into sleep once more. Emma pauses, looks at him, and then looks away. She returns to the bedroom, lowers herself to the edge of the bed, and lifts her feet one at a time beneath the covers. The night gathers around the house, but it does not feel like a trap. It feels like a curtain that will rise. Emma closes her eyes and lets the soft weight of the moment rest upon her. The maple leaves touch the window with fingers of wind. Somewhere, far off, thunder rehearses a single note. At dawn the street is pale and clean, the way a page looks before a writer sets down the first difficult line. Mark sits in the car with the engine running and the heater humming. His hands rest on the wheel as if it were a railing above a height that makes him dizzy. The windshield is faintly fogged. He wipes a circle clear with the back of his knuckles and watches the neighbor's sprinkler swing its glittering arc across a lawn that looks more perfect than he feels. He dials a familiar number. The call connects on the second ring. "Good morning, Mom," he says. "Are you sleeping at all?" Helen's voice is bright. It has the calm of a nurse and the firmness of a coach. "You sounded worn out on Sunday." "I am fine," he answers, and hears the lie as it leaves his mouth. "No, I am not fine." A pause. Then the sound of running water on her end of the line. The tap closes. Dishes settle. "Tell me." They moved the target again. He watches his breath cloud the glass and fade. "They want 2 more accounts by Friday. I have one lead that might sign if I promise a discount we cannot afford. The other is not answering my emails. The regional director says there is no excuse this quarter. Everyone is pushing. There is talk about headcount. I am tied to a number that keeps running ahead of me." "You always catch up," she says. "Not with a mortgage like ours," he replies. The words come faster now, as if a dam has shifted. The refinance rate looked smart at the time. Now I am watching the calendar like a clock that only counts what I have not done. I wake in the night because I can feel the house as a weight I am holding over my head. I cannot drop it. "What about Emma?" Helen asks. "Is she helping you keep a schedule?" A home works when the pressure is shared. He imagines his mother at the sink, hands folded in a towel, seeing a picture of his life that has no grain and no shadow. "She tries," he says. "She writes lists. She talks about the doctor, the plan, the bag by the door. But she does not understand what it takes to hold a job when the ground keeps moving. She wants me at the appointment on Saturday. Dad needs the dock fixed. I cannot be in 2 places at once." "Marriage takes discipline," Helen says softly. "Do not let the house run you. Do not let her set all the rules. A wife becomes strong when a husband is steady." "I am trying to be steady," he says. His voice thins. "But when I walk in the door at night, I feel like a stranger who should apologize for being late to a life that went on without him. I say the wrong words. I make a joke at the wrong time. I look at her and think about the bonus like a light I need to switch on." "Then decide," Helen says. "Decide the order of your loyalties. Work, family, yourself. Put them in a line. Live by it." He closes his eyes. He sees 3 words in his mind, stacked like boxes he cannot lift. "I do not know how," he says, and the truth of it surprises him. "I do not know where to start." "Start with the dock," she answers. "Start with one board that needs replacing. Then move to the next. Do not let her control the rhythm. She is not sick. Pregnancy is not an illness. Keep moving. You have always been better when you are moving. He breathes in. He breathes out. The fog on the glass clears to a pale circle again. All right, he says. Thank you. Eat breakfast, Helen adds. And salt it. Confidence is seasoning. When he hangs up, the car is warm. The world looks sharper. He feels newly built and strangely hollow, like a house framed in wood that has not yet met its weather. Inside, the kitchen smells of toast and citrus. Emma stands by the sink rinsing berries under a gentle stream. She turns when he enters. There is no accusation in her eyes. There is a watchfulness that makes him want to be careful with his words. I started a pot of coffee, she says. There is yogurt in the bowl. Thank you, he says, and sits. The spoon is cold in his hand. He lifts a bite and cannot taste it. His phone vibrates. He silences it. He looks at Emma and tries a smile that feels like a mask he has worn too long. What is the plan for today? He asks. I will wash the infant clothes and check the car seat installation, she replies. Then I will rest for an hour. I promised Sarah I would drop off the extra baking pan I borrowed. He nods. It is all sensible. It is all true. He hears himself say, Mom invited us for Saturday lunch. She will make lasagna. Dad needs help with the doc after. We have the appointment with Dr. Patel Saturday morning, Emma says. Her voice is steady. It is the birth plan discussion. It would help if you heard it from her. He looks at the table. He sees a tiny nick in the wood that was not there last month. He puts his thumb on it and presses as if he could push it closed. I will try, he says, and he hates how weak the verb sounds. I will try to rearrange. Her gaze drops to his hand. For a moment her face is unguarded. Then she nods. If you cannot, I will record it, she says. I would prefer that you were there. I know, he answers, and the room falls into a silence that hums like a cable under strain. Evening comes with a sky the color of a quiet bruise. Emma stands at the stove warming a simple soup and slicing bread. A list lies open on the counter. It is neat and small and almost beautiful. When she checks one item, she does not draw a hard slash. She draws a line like a thread laid down with care. Mark enters with the chill of the porch still in his jacket. He sets his keys in the bowl and looks at the counter. A frown moves across his face like a shadow crossing a wall. Did you pick up the beer? He asks. Emma blinks, then closes the drawer where she has just placed the paring knife. I forgot, she says. I am sorry. I will add it to the list for tomorrow. He hears his mother's voice in the space between them. Do not let the house run you. Do not let her set all the rules. His mouth tightens. He reaches for a clean glass and sets it down a little too firmly. You never think ahead, he says. Mom was right. The words land and the air shifts. Emma looks at him, and in that look is a landscape he does not want to read. Not anger. Not fear. A cold disappointment that feels like a door closing. Then maybe you should marry her advice, she says. Her tone is calm. The words are precise and without heat. They do not hit him like a slap. They sink into him like a stone dropped into deep water. He opens his mouth and finds that he has no reply that would make anything better. He takes his jacket. He takes his phone. He says, I need air, and here's how thin that sounds. He leaves the house, and the door clicks neatly behind him like a sentence with a full stop. The street is darker now. A thin rain begins that the forecast did not promise. He walks without a destination and counts the beats of his shoes against the sidewalk, as if he could march himself into a version of his life that makes sense. Inside, Emma stands very still until the sound of his steps has faded. Then she turns off the flame under the soup and places the lid on the pot. She does not cry. She does not pace. She carries the list to her desk and sits with her back straight. She writes one line. Plan B, in case I am alone. She reads the words and feels their shape settle into her. It is not a wish and not a threat. It is an instruction. She opens the hallway closet and brings the charcoal duffel bag back to the bed. She opens the zipper and studies the contents with a nurse's inventory. Nightgown. Slippers. Insurance folder. Cash. Phone charger. Small notebook. She adds a copy of her identification, a printed list of emergency contacts, and a sealed envelope with a spare key to her parents' house. She walks to the car and checks the infant seat base with firm hands. She listens for the click that promises safety. She tightens the strap. She tugs again. She closes the door and tests the handle to be sure it has latched. The porch light casts her shadow onto the driveway. Rain points bright needles through its glow. Back inside, she takes her wallet from the drawer and looks at the space where the secondary credit card used to lie. The envelope marked closed rests under a stack of medical forms. She leaves it there. She opens her laptop and pulls up the document she calls welcome. Under the column labeled delivery day, she adds 2 items. Fuel in the car. Phone battery at 80% by evening. Her pen does not shake. When she finishes, she closes the computer and lets her palm rest on its cool shell as if on the lid of a sleeping instrument. There is a soft knock at the back door. Emma opens it to find Sarah standing under a small umbrella, cheeks flushed from the damp air, a glass baking pan wrapped in a towel in her arms. "I thought you might need this back before the weekend," Sarah says. "It is silly, but I know I will forget if I put it off." Emma smiles. "Thank you," she says. "Come in for a minute." Sarah steps into the kitchen and places the pan on the counter. Her eyes move over the duffel near the door, the list on the table, the soup on the stove. She does not comment. She has the gift of seeing without making the moment feel like a mirror. "Are you sleeping at all?" Sarah asks gently. "Some," Emma replies. "Enough to dream." "Good," Sarah says. She hesitates. "If you ever need a ride, day or night, call me before you call a stranger. I am 5 houses away. That is what neighbors are for." Emma breathes out, and the breath sounds like relief. "Thank you," she says again, and the repetition is not a habit. It is a thread. When the door closes behind Sarah, the house is quiet but not empty. Emma carries the baking pan to the cabinet and slides it into its place. She hears the distant shift of tires on wet pavement and knows without looking that Mark is turning onto their street. She does not move to meet him. She does not rehearse an apology or draw up an indictment. She takes the duffel to the door, checks the zipper one last time, and sets the handles so that she can lift them with a single motion. She turns off the kitchen light and lets the room rest in its natural dusk. The front door opens. Mark steps in and freezes, as if the change in the air were a physical barrier he did not expect to meet. Water beads on his jacket. He removes it with careful fingers and hangs it in a straight line. He does not look at the bag. He looks at Emma. She looks back. "I walked," he says. "It started to rain." "I know," she answers. He swallows. The tendons in his throat shift like ropes. "I should not have said that about my mother." "I heard what you said," Emma replies. "I also heard what I told myself." He waits. "I told myself to be ready," she says. "That is all." There is nothing in her voice that asks him to explain himself. There is nothing that offers him a place to lay his anger down. He feels the choice rise in him like a wave that is both invitation and warning. He nods once, because a nod is the smallest thing he can do that is still movement. "I will be at my parents' on Saturday," he says at last. "They need me." "I will be at the doctor," she answers. "I need you." The sentence hangs between them for a long, bright second. Then it lowers itself to the ground and grows roots that neither of them can see. He picks up his keys. He holds them as if they might tell him what to do. "I will call you," he says. Emma says nothing. She opens the door for him. He steps out into the rain. The night takes him in with the softness of a dark coat. He walks to the car and drives away. The red of the taillight slides over the wet street like a cut that has decided to close. Emma stands in the doorway and listens. The rain thickens. Far away, thunder gathers the low note it practiced the night before. She places her hand on the duffel handle. She does not lift it. Not yet. She closes the door and locks it, not as a barrier but as a boundary that has finally found its shape. In the quiet that follows, the house breathes with her. The maple branches touch the window with patient fingers. The storm is no longer a rumor. It is a presence. It will come when it comes. Emma moves through the dim rooms with steady steps, and every step says the same unadorned word. Ready. The morning opens with a thin, metallic light. The sky above Bellevue carries a film of gray, as if someone has breathed upon a mirror and left it clouded. Emma wakes to the hush before weather, the kind of hush that gathers its strength in corners and under doors. She sits up slowly, waits for the first flutter from within, and greets her child with a palm to her abdomen. The response is a quiet turn. It feels like agreement. When she steps into the kitchen, Mark is already dressed. His suitcase stands by the door like an obedient dog. He checks his phone, then checks it again. A small crease marks the skin between his eyebrows. "We are leaving at 10, he says. "Mom has everything planned. It will be 2 nights, maybe 3. We will come back Tuesday." Emma folds her hands around a mug so that the warmth does not escape. "Next week is my due date," she says. Dr. Patel would never approve a long drive. Mark gives a practiced smile that shows no teeth. "It is not far," he answers. "We will be at the lake by noon. There is a bed for you to rest." Pregnancy is not an illness. It is also not a test of endurance, Emma replies. The hospital bag is by the door for a reason. He looks at the bag as if seeing it for the first time. Then he looks past it, as if it were a minor obstacle between him and a version of the day he prefers. "You will be fine," he says. "You always are." Everything in her wants to refuse, to say the single great no that would point the day back to safety. But there is a curious stillness in Mark that she knows well. He is a man who, once locked on a course, treats advice like wind against a windshield. She weighs the risk. She watches the clouded light. She speaks slowly. "I will go if you promise that if anything changes, we will drive straight to the hospital," she says. No discussion. No delay. His eyes flicker. He nods once, as if he has agreed to a minor amendment on a contract that is already signed. "Of course," he says. "You will be comfortable." The hours between 10 and noon pass in small, careful steps. Emma moves with deliberate economy, as if she were crossing a narrow beam over water. She eats. She drinks. She breathes. She sets the duffel in the trunk and checks the infant seat again. The click is firm. The strap is true. She sends a short message to Sarah, going out of town for the weekend. "We'll be careful." She places the phone in her pocket like a lifeline coiled and ready. They drive north. The highway runs between a wall of trees that drink the dim light and give nothing back. Mark has chosen a route that schemes the edge of the lake his parents love. He speaks of the new boards on the dock and the way the morning rises off the water like steam. Emma watches the sky. It has a weight to it. She breathes as she has practiced. She counts the inhale and the exhale. She places her hand on her abdomen when the first tightness passes through, low and firm. It is not yet a wave. It is the rumor of a wave. At the second tightening, she closes her eyes. The sensation is stronger, not pain, but a hand closing and opening. She notes the time on the dashboard. 11:44. She says nothing. She waits to know if the body is whispering or speaking. At the third, her breath shortens without her consent. She opens her mouth and lets out a soft sound that is not a word. Mark glances over, alarm pricking through his composure. "Are you all right?" he asks. "A contraction," she says. "It is early. It may be nothing." He returns his gaze to the road, and the road offers him the comfort of lines and rules. "We are close," he says. "You can rest at the house." The fourth contraction arrives with authority. It takes her in both hands, squeezes, and does not let go. Heat travels outward from her spine into her hips. She breathes, she counts, she breathes. When it ebbs, she opens her eyes and looks straight ahead at the seam where sky meets road. "Mark," she says, "we need to turn around." He presses his lips together. The crease between his eyebrows deepens. "You said it might be nothing." "It is not nothing." He signals, but he does not exit. The next ramp slides past like a missed chance. Then the water breaks. It is not dramatic. There is no shattering. It is a warm rush and then another, as sure and undeniable as a tide. Emma gasps and looks down. The dark bloom spreads, patient and unstoppable, soaking into the seat, marking its way into the foam beneath the leather. The smell is clean and mineral. The body has opened a door and does not intend to close it. "Mark," she says, and her voice is both a call and a verdict. "My water has broken." Please take me to the hospital now. His face goes white. For a breath he is still. Then he is a man awakened into the wrong kind of clarity. He looks at the stain, not at her. He sees the leather, not the child. He sees the cost, not the need. This is a new car, he says, and the sentence is so small that it cannot bear the weight he is asking it to hold. You're making a mess. Emma stares at him. For a moment the world narrows to a point no larger than the tip of a pen. Everything beyond that point is noise. Her breath goes shallow. The next contraction gathers itself. Pull over, she says. Please. He signals. He pulls onto the shoulder with a neatness that is almost tender. Rain begins in a fine, cold mist. The wipers whisper. The lake, visible beyond a screen of trees, lowers its face to the wind. He puts the car in park. He unclicks his seatbelt. He reaches across her, and for one hopeful fraction of a second she thinks he will help her out, that he will open his arms as a brace against the storm inside her. Instead, he presses the button and opens the passenger door wide. Step out, he says. I will call someone. You cannot sit here like this. I cannot stand, she answers, and the contraction answers with her, hard and full. Pain builds like a tide pushing against a cliff. She grabs the door frame and draws herself forward exactly 2 inches. The seatbelt locks across her chest. She fumbles with the latch. Mark unbuckles it for her and flinches when his fingers brush the damp fabric of her dress. Get out, he repeats. Please, Emma. I will call an ambulance. I will keep the car clean. The words are shapes with edges. They cut as they pass. She turns her head and looks at him, truly looks, and sees a man crushed under a structure he mistook for protection. She sees fear in him, and pride covering it like paint over wet plaster. She sees a boy who never learned how to carry a life that was not his own. Help me stand, she says, and her voice is not a plea. It is a last instruction. He steps back, as if the air between them has become hot. His eyes move to the dark bloom again. He cannot help himself. It holds him the way a bright accident holds onlookers at a distance. I cannot, he says. The next moment slides into silence, and then out of it like an animal moving through brush. Emma swings her legs toward the open door. Cold air climbs her spine. She gathers the edge of the seat with her fingers and pulls herself forward until her feet find the grit of the shoulder. A fern brushes her ankle. The car stands high beside her like a wall. A voice breaks the air behind them. Emma? Is that you? She turns her head. Sarah stands under a small umbrella, her face alert with concern, her other hand already pulling a phone from her pocket. I think my water has broken, Emma says. She does not have to say more. Sarah is beside her in 3 strides, the umbrella roofed above them, her arm a steady post at Emma's back. We are calling an ambulance, Sarah says to Mark with the professional calm of a person who will not argue inside a burning room. Please tell me the cross street. Mark names it in a voice that has shrunk to a thread. He hovers by the hood, useless and restless, as if expecting a test he has not studied for. He stares at the leather. He stares at his hands. He cannot seem to look at Emma's face. The siren speaks first as a rumor in the distance. It grows. The sound gathers layers the low thrum, then the high keen, then the steady pulse that threads itself through the rain like a metronome for the heart. Emma leans into Sarah and breathes through another wave. Sarah counts with her, not by numbers but by presence. Each exhale lands in Sarah's cupped palm, invisible and real. Stay with me, Sarah says. You are doing well. You are safe. The ambulance arrives like a decision. Its lights throw red across the water and red across the undersides of the leaves. 2 paramedics move with the clean, direct grace of people who understand time. One kneels to look into Emma's eyes. The other unfolds the stretcher as neatly as a page being turned. Contractions? The first asks. For minutes, Emma answers. Maybe 3. Any bleeding? No. Any dizziness? No. Just pain. Good, he says, and the word is a hand on her shoulder. We have you. They lift her with a practiced tide. The stretcher rolls. The rain speaks in whispers on the ambulance roof. Sarah keeps pace, her umbrella tilting to cover Emma's face, her free hand tucked over Emma's fingers like a second skin. Mark stands aside. His mouth opens. His mouth closes. He looks at the smear on the seat the way a man looks at a bill that has come due sooner than expected. He takes a step toward the open doors of the ambulance, then stops. He slips his phone from his pocket. He stares at the blank screen, as if a set of instructions might appear in letters of fire and tell him how to be a husband in a storm. Emma sees him through the bright rectangle of the ambulance door. For a moment the sight of him is a memory. Mark in sleep, Mark in sunlight, Mark on the first day at the lake when he showed her how the minnows move like silver leaves underwater. She feels grief, clean and sharp. Then she feels a rising that is not grief at all. It is something clear and resolute. It is the knowledge that he has chosen himself and that she must now choose differently. The doors stand open. The paramedic straps the belt low across her hips. The monitor wakes with a pulse that answers her own. He speaks into the radio, and his voice is calm. He could be ordering supper. Sarah climbs up and sits at Emma's side. She takes Emma's hand and slides her own palm under it, making a cradle from flesh and bone. "I am not leaving," she says. Emma turns her head until she can see Sarah's eyes. In them she reads not pity but respect, and a quiet anger that is loyal to her. She draws a breath. It is a full breath. It fills the chest she had not realized she was holding tight. Another contraction mounts, tall and inevitable. She meets it. When it ebbs, she looks past Sarah through the doorway once more. Mark stands in the rain without an umbrella. The water flattens his hair against his forehead and darkens his coat. He raises a hand as if to speak, as if to call out, as if to claim something, but the siren answers first. The paramedic closes the left door. The rectangular world narrows. Emma squeezes Sarah's fingers. Her voice is low and level, the voice of a witness who has decided what the testimony will be. "He left me," she says, and the words do not tremble. "But I will never forget this." The ambulance holds a small, contained world. White light pools in the ceiling panels. The floor hums through the wheels like a low, steady drum. Emma counts each rise and fall of breath as if breath were a rope she is climbing hand over hand. Sarah's palm stays under Emma's fingers, a cradle made of warmth and patience. At the emergency bay doors, everything moves with a practiced calm. A nurse with steady eyes checks Emma's name band. Another listens to the rhythm of the baby's heart, which flashes across a monitor in bright, confident spikes. The corridor smells of antiseptic and linen. Doors open. Doors close. Time narrows to a corridor with a single direction. In triage, a resident kneels so that his gaze meets Emma's at the level of her breath. "You are 8 centimeters," he says. He does not raise his voice. He does not hurry his words. "You have done the hard work. You are safe here." Sarah steps back just enough to give space, then lifts her phone and dials. "Linda, this is Sarah Williams," she says when Emma's mother answers. "Emma is at St. David's. She is in good hands. Please drive safely. There is no need to panic. She asked me to call you." "Thank you." Emma hears through the phone's small speaker, a voice wrapped in tears and restraint. "Tell her we are on our way." The labor suite is quiet in the way of a chapel. A midwife with hair streaked silver introduces herself as Corinne. She adjusts the monitor, checks the 4-line, and speaks to Emma in simple, precise sentences that sound like steps cut into rock. "Breathe down. Hands on your own legs. Follow what your body asks. You are not alone." Contractions crest and break with a force that feels ancient and impersonal. Between them there are islands of time that last 3 or 4 breaths. In each island, Emma thinks one thought and then lets it pass like a leaf on water. "You are almost here. I am ready to meet you." The next wave lifts her. She bears down, and the room changes shape around her effort. Sarah stands where Emma can see her without turning. She does not speak unless asked. When she does, she counts an exhale or brings a cup of ice chips or smooths the damp hair from Emma's temple with the back of her fingers. Her face has the calm that arrives when purpose is clean and needs no argument. "Now," Corinne says at last. "One more." Exactly like that. Emma makes a sound that is not language. It is stronger than language. The world narrows to the work that the body knows. When the sound breaks, It breaks into a cry that is not hers. It is higher and new and startling. The room changes again. The air becomes brighter, as if the ceiling has lifted and the weather outside has been repaired. They place the baby on Emma's chest. Wait. Heat. The smell of skin and salt. The child's mouth searches with a small, determined motion. Emma laughs once, a quiet laugh that shakes loose the last tightness in her shoulders. A tear leaves the corner of her eye and pauses at the curve of her ear. She does not touch it. She lets it rest where it has chosen to rest. "Hello," she says to the small face that studies her with the unblinking attention of first sight. "I have been waiting to learn your name." Sarah moves closer, her voice a whisper out of respect for the moment. "Your parents are 20 minutes away," she says. "I told them the room number. I will meet them in the lobby." "Thank you," Emma answers. She does not take her eyes off the baby. "Please tell them that everything is well." The hospital cleaves the day into gentle segments. A nurse shows Emma how to help the child latch. Another checks her blood pressure and makes a note. Sarah returns with water, with a blanket that smells faintly of detergent and safety, with the sound of Emma's parents' footsteps coming down the corridor. Linda enters first, her face already softened by relief. George follows with flowers wrapped in the thin paper that grocery stores use when there is no time to find ribbon. He stops when he sees the bundle on Emma's chest and covers his mouth with his hand, as if to hold a prayer inside. "You did it," Linda says, bending to kiss her daughter's forehead. "You did it, and you are all right." Emma nods. She feels both enormous and very small, as if she is the size of the bed and also a single cell that has just divided. The baby sighs and needs the blanket with a fist the size of a plum. In the first study hour after birth, the world outside the hospital seems far and almost imaginary. It returns in a small, insistent way when Sarah's phone vibrates with a message from a neighbor down the lake road. She reads, then looks up with the careful face of someone who has to deliver news in a calm room. "Emma," she says softly. A bystander recorded what happened by the shoulder. The clip is online. "Your face is not visible." The caption asks people to respect privacy. But the scene is clear enough to understand. It is being shared. Emma feels a quiet shock, like a bell struck once inside the chest. She looks down at her child, whose breath lifts and falls with perfect seriousness. "Will it help?" she asks. "Or will it harm?" "It will do what truth does," Sarah replies. "It will speak for itself. Let the truth speak for itself." Emma nods. She does not ask to see the video. She strokes the baby's hair with the inside of her finger and returns her attention to the rhythm that matters. Beside her, Linda sits and prays without words. George takes the flowers to the sink and finds a pitcher. He fills it, clumsily, carefully, as if water were rare and must be paid for in attention. It takes less than an hour for the clip to move beyond the neighborhood. A local advocacy account shares it with a note about the need for compassion toward women in labor. Comments collect like leaves pulled into a current. Most are simple and fierce. "This is not how you treat a wife." Some ask for context in good faith. A few are cruel and small. The algorithm pulls the clip and delivers it to screens that are far from Bellevue. It does not sleep. Emma's phone, on the table beside a plastic cup, vibrates with calls that she does not answer. The name on the display appears again and again. Mark. 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 She turns the screen face down. It is late afternoon when the ring becomes a call she cannot ignore. The vibration continues through the plastic, relentless. She lifts the phone and stares at the ceiling for one breath, then taps to accept. "Emma," Mark says, and the voice that reaches her is high and frayed. "Please. People are attacking me online. Someone at the office sent the clip to my manager. They are saying things that are not accurate. I need you to tell them it was complicated. You know it was complicated." Emma looks at the sleeping child. The child does not yet know the word complicated. The child knows hunger and warmth and the geography of skin. "I am in the hospital with our newborn," she says. "I cannot talk about this right now." "Help me," he says. It is the same phrase he used on the road, but the shape of it is different now. It is not a command. It is a raft he wants her to hold steady while he climbs in. "Please say something. Anything." She watches Sarah, who watches her back with an expression that contains respect and a boundary. Emma breathes once. The breath is level. "I will speak when I am ready," she says. "Right now I am not ready." She ends the call. She places the phone back on the table. She feels her heart slow to meet the baby's measured breath. In a glass office 2 miles away, a human resources coordinator drafts an email with the subject line "Administrative Review." It is written in the language of procedure. It states that a video has raised concerns regarding conduct unbecoming of an employee in a manner that may affect the reputation of the company. It states that the matter will be investigated impartially. It states that the employee will be placed on paid administrative leave while facts are gathered. The email references the policy handbook under Employee Conduct and Ethics. A representative from the union is copied. The words are formal, clean, and exact, like stitches that will hold until a wound decides how it intends to heal. A meeting follows in a conference room where the blinds are half closed against the same gray sky. An HR lead, a legal counsel, a union representative, and the department manager take seats. They do not rush. They establish the timeline. They request any additional context. They note that the person in the video speaking with the pregnant woman is alleged to be an employee. They note that public reaction is intense, but public reaction is not the same as evidence. Facts will be weighed. Process will be observed. The HR lead schedules conversations for the next day. One with the employee. One with a witness who appears in the ambulance report as the neighbor who assisted the mother at the roadside. Her name is Sarah Williams. When the call reaches Sarah, she agrees to attend. "I will give a statement," she says. "I will not speculate. I will describe what I saw." Her voice remains even. She is not there to hand down a sentence. She is there to answer questions. Mark receives the HR email on his phone while he sits in his car outside his parents' house. He reads it once and then again, as if a second reading will turn the letters into a different alphabet. He forwards it to himself by reflex, as if a copy might soften the truth of the original. When he looks up, Helen is at the front door, her hands pressed together as if in prayer or in refusal to clap. Inside the hospital, evening draws soft edges around the room. The baby stirs and sighs, hungry again. Emma learns a new version of herself by the glow of a bedside lamp. She lets the child latch. Relief moves across her like a small warm tide. The radio on the shelf above the sink murmurs through headlines. She does not listen until a familiar company name catches and holds her attention. Has placed an employee on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into a widely shared video. A spokesperson emphasized the company's commitment to employee conduct and family values. No names have been released. Emma closes her eyes. The words do not give her pleasure. They do not comfort her in the way she once imagined vindication might comfort. They bring a quiet, thoughtful stillness. Process exists. She does not have to hold the weight of public judgment alone. The world is larger than one man's fear and one woman's pain. Sarah returns from the hallway with 2 cups of tea that smell of chamomile and window boxes. "Your parents have gone home to rest," she says. "They will be back in the morning. I will be here for an hour longer, and then I will sleep, and then I will come back." "Thank you," Emma says. She looks at the child and then at Sarah. "Thank you for staying." Sarah sits, folds her hands, and smiles. "Let the truth keep speaking," she says. "We will give it room." The guitar of a quiet song threads through the radio static, simple and unadorned. The lamp warms the wall. The rain, now gentle, taps the window as if to remind them that the world continues outside, imperfect and persistent. Emma draws the blanket higher around the baby. She rests her head back and lets her eyes soften, not to sleep, but to watch more clearly. Hope does not arrive like a trumpet. It arrives like this: a child's breath evening out, a friend's chair drawn close, a policy manual that promises procedure, a sentence on the radio that does not name names, and the steady conviction that the next good moment will lead to another. Emma holds her child, and the room holds them both, and the night that once frightened her becomes a shelter she had not known she could trust. Morning arranges itself in soft layers, a shaft of light on the nursery wall, the low hum of the refrigerator, the hush that follows a night of waking and feeding. Emma stands at the window of her parents' house with the baby in her arms and watches a small square of sun move across the lawn. The maple outside is the same kind of tree as the one in Bellevue, but the wind here feels different, slower, as if it understands the pace she needs. Her mother has made coffee. Her father has set out a vase that holds a single white flower, not because a single flower is enough, but because it is precise. The baby stirs, opens a small mouth in a perfect O, and sighs back into sleep. Emma lowers her cheek to the child's hair and closes her eyes. In that silence, she hears something new. It is not victory. It is not relief. It is the sound of a ground that will hold. That afternoon, while the baby sleeps in a bassinet by the window, Emma opens her laptop at the dining table and places her fingers on the keys. She does not outline. She does not rehearse. She writes like a person who has practiced breathing and has learned that air can be trusted. The title places itself at the top of the page. The Day He Left Me. She begins with the road, the gray light, the thin rain, the weight of a body making its own weather. She recounts the words that were said and the words that were not. She writes without cruelty. She writes without shame. When she reaches the sentence that once seemed too hard to look at, "He opened the door and told me to get out," she does not pause. She lets the sentence be a step. She lets the next sentence be another step. When she is finished, she reads the piece aloud, softly, as if to a child who needs the truth to arrive without thunder. Then she clicks publish. The post moves through the world the way a candle flame catches another wick, quietly at first, then with a steady reach that surprises the room. Comments gather in the space below her words like people arriving at a vigil. I carried my first child alone to the taxi and did not tell anyone for 3 years. My sister left in the 3rd trimester. You gave me courage to leave. Reading this with my daughter. She is learning the names of things. Emma reads until her eyes blur and the words become a river. She closes the computer and presses her palm to its warm shell, as if to thank a living thing. 2 miles across town, the company where Mark works continues its process. In a bright office with blinds half open to an overcast sky, a human resources lead opens a folder labeled Administrative Review and reviews a timeline that now includes an ambulance report and a witness statement from Sarah Williams. The legal counsel speaks in careful phrases. The union representative asks for clarity about next steps. No one raises a voice. The words are measured. They hold both gravity and restraint. Before the meeting ends, an agreement is drafted. The employee will remain on paid leave. He will be referred to mandatory counseling through the company's assistance program. He will meet again with HR in 2 weeks to discuss either a structured return with conditions or a voluntary resignation. Nothing in the document offers punishment. Everything in it offers a path. Mark receives the email while sitting alone in his car outside his parents' house. The rain has ended, but the air remains heavy. He reads the message twice, then pushes the phone into the pocket of his jacket and lowers his head to the steering wheel. The horn does not sound. The car holds its breath. He dials his mother. "Mom," he says when she answers. His voice is rough at the edges, as if it has been used against stone. "I messed up. I do not know who I am without control." Helen is silent for a long moment. He hears the click of a light switch in the kitchen, the soft closing of a cabinet, the slow settling of a house that has learned to hold secrets and grief. "You are my son," she says at last. That is a beginning. It is not an excuse. "What will you do next?" "I will go to counseling," he says. The words feel strange in his mouth, like a language he once knew and forgot. "I will sign what they sent. I will speak to Emma. I will apologize." Apology is not a rope that pulls you back into the life you left, Helen says. It is a door you open from your side. It does not require her to walk through. He closes his eyes. He nods, though she cannot see it. "I understand," he says, and for the first time in days, he hears himself tell the truth. Days pass along a new rhythm, feedings and naps, short walks around the quiet block, and small tasks that make a room ready for the life that has moved into it. Emma writes a second post, then a third, not about Mark, but about the child's sleeping hand, about the engineers of procedure who protect the vulnerable from the loudness of rumor, about the way grief and gratitude can stand in the same doorway and not ask each other to leave. An email arrives from a producer at a local talk show called Mothers United. The note is brief and respectful. "We read your piece. We would be honored if you would come speak about birth, boundaries, and the strength of community support. We can arrange a car and provide childcare on site if you wish." Emma reads the message twice. She turns the chair so that she faces the bassinet. The baby sleeps with one fist tucked under the chin, as if considering a question. Emma writes back, "Yes, I will come. I would like to bring my mother. I would like the questions in advance." On the day of the taping, the studio lights are kind but bright. The set is modest. 2 chairs, a low table, a fern that looks healthy in a way that comforts. The host introduces Emma in a tone that is both warm and precise. "Today, we speak with a new mother who faced a crisis with clarity and grace," she says. Her essay, "The Day He Left Me," has brought comfort and courage to many. "We will not discuss names. We will discuss choices." Emma speaks without ornament. She speaks about planning the go bag. She speaks about asking for help and receiving it. She thanks the paramedics and the nurses by title. She mentions the HR process in simple terms. "It exists so that people are not judged only by the heat of a day," she says. "It exists so that truth can be understood in a cool room." A mother in the audience raises a hand. "How did you find your voice?" she asks at the moment when silence seemed safer. She reads the letter once. She folds it and places it back in the envelope. She does not tear it. She does not hide it. She sets it on the mantel between a framed picture of her parents at a county fair and a small clay bird the color of earth. She stands for a long moment in front of those 3 objects. Then she returns to the bassinet and watches her child sleep. Across town, in a quiet office where evening makes the windows into dark mirrors, mark signs of voluntary resignation. The HR lead thanks him for his professionalism. The union representative nods. The legal counsel collects the documents and places them in a folder. After they leave, the lead sits for a moment alone and allows the weight of the day to rest upon the desk. Process is not a shield against sorrow. It is a way to carry sorrow without breaking. Emma's blog grows, but it does not roar. It builds the way a house is built, beam by beam, with care for the angles and respect for the weather. Readers send short donations with notes that say, "Use this for diapers," or "Buy yourself an hour of sleep." She uses the money for a class on infant safety, for a good car seat, for a meal she eats with both hands free while her mother holds the baby and watches the dusk. On a quiet night, she writes again. The room is still. The lamp is low. The child's breathing is a small tide that never forgets to return. She writes about refusal and repair. She writes about how apology is a door that opens from one side and how forgiveness is not a staircase that leads back to what was. She writes, "Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means I survived." She pauses with her fingers at rest upon the keys. She reads the line aloud, and the words settle into the room like a chord struck cleanly on a piano. She clicks publish and sets the computer aside. She stands. She walks to the crib and rests her hand lightly on the child's back, palm to breath, mother to tide. Outside, the wind moves through the trees with a sound like pages turning. The house holds its shape. The night no longer asks her to be brave. It asks her only to be present. She answers yes, and the yes does not tremble. 2 years turn like pages in a book that has learned a gentler grammar. Morning enters the community library through high windows, laying quiet squares of light on a circle of chairs. On a whiteboard, in a hand that is neat and steady, someone has written 2 words in green marker, "Bloom again." The letters are simple. They do not call attention to themselves. They offer an invitation. Emma arrives early, a canvas tote in one hand and a stack of binders in the other. She sets out paper cups, a pitcher of water with thin lemon slices that float like small suns, and a plate of tea biscuits that crumble softly without argument. She moves without haste, yet nothing feels late. There is a small scar on her palm where a hospital 4 once rested, a pale crescent like a moon at dawn. When she opens the blinds, the room brightens as if it remembers her. On the far side of the library, A child laughs in the children's alcove, where a volunteer reads a story about a brave rabbit. Emma's daughter sits cross-legged on a rug patterned with stars, a paper crown slightly tilted on her hair. She turns her head when she senses her mother watching and lifts her hand in a solemn wave. Emma waves back, palm to palm across a distance that does not feel wide. Her mother, Linda, waits nearby with a patience that has ripened into joy. She will keep gentle watch for the next hour, the way a lighthouse keeps faith with every returning boat. By 10 o'clock, the women arrive. They come in quietly, as people do when entering a place where honesty is the price of entry and the reward. A nurse with kind eyes. A college student who looks as if she has carried a heavy bag for too many months. A grandmother in a floral scarf. A woman who teaches music and another who has not sung in years. They take seats and look at the floor and then at one another. Silence fills the circle, but the silence is different from the silence they once lived inside. It is not the silence of fear. It is the silence that comes before a good note. Sarah walks in last. She carries nothing but a small notebook and the calm of a person who has kept a promise over a long distance. She does not move to the front. She chooses a chair like anyone else and rests her hands on her knees. Her smile is the kind that builds a bridge and then steps back to let other feet cross. Emma stands. She does not need to call for quiet. The room has already offered it. "Welcome," she says. Her voice is clear, and the microphone on the small stand carries it to the corners without strain. This circle is a place for truth spoken softly and held firmly. There are 3 rules. We are kind. We are specific. We are not alone. A laugh ripples, not because of humor, but because relief sometimes makes the sound of a laugh when it finds a chair to sit upon. Emma continues. 2 years ago, I wrote an essay at a dining table while my child slept. It was called The Day He Left Me. That title was not the end of the story, and it was not the beginning. It was a door. Many of you wrote to me. You told me about the doors you had walked through. You told me about the doors you were not yet ready to open. Today we will learn how to build our own hinges. She does not rush. She hands out binders with tabs labeled boundaries, safety, finances, legal, care. The pages are practical without being cold. There are hotline numbers, shelter addresses, and a list of counselors who charge on a sliding scale. There is a page titled Language for Saying No and another titled How to Ask for Help When You Are Afraid of Being a Burden. Emma watches the pages land in hands and straighten under palms. They begin with breath. Emma learned this from a midwife whose hair was the color of winter light. We will breathe down, she says, and the circle inhales together, then exhales, and the air itself seems to settle. They read aloud a paragraph each from a section on boundaries. There are pauses. There are nods. No one is asked to share more than she wishes. No one measures the worth of a story by the size of its wound. Halfway through the workshop, a woman with a blue scarf takes a deep breath and speaks. My partner did not leave me in a car, she says, but he left me in a room with silence that I thought was my fault. I am here because I want to water something inside me that he told me could not grow. The circle holds the words as if they were an orchid that needs a particular kind of light. Emma listens and answers. Growth does not ask permission, she says. It asks for conditions. Today we will make some. There is a small rhythm to the hour. Questions, then sentences that are not questions, then hands that reach for water or for paper or for courage. When Emma speaks about finances, she does not use numbers like armor. She speaks of envelopes and plans and the way a budget is a promise you make to your future self. When she speaks about safety, she does not use fear to command attention. She uses clarity. A boundary is a fence that does not apologize for existing, she says. It has a gate. You control the gate. Through the glass wall at the back of the meeting room, the library lobby is visible. A bulletin board with flyers for tutoring and a poster for a poetry reading. The door opens and closes without fuss as patrons come and go with books held to their chests like parcels of weather. Among them, a man pauses. He does not approach the glass. He stands at a respectful distance, as if observing a painting that he once helped frame and then cracked. Mark watches the circle with an expression that carries sorrow and a lesson learned too late. There is no anger in his face. There is not even pleading. There is recognition. He is not there to interrupt. He is there to know. Sarah notices him first. Her hand tightens once on her notebook, then relaxes. She does not signal anyone. She does not rise. She trusts the distance to do its quiet work. Linda, in the children's alcove, looks up from a picture book and sees the shape of a man by the lobby windows. She meets his gaze for a second and then returns to the page without haste, pointing to an illustration of a small rabbit that has finally found its warren. Emma's daughter laughs at a line about courage that rhymes with door. The volunteer turns the page. Back in the circle, Emma brings the workshop to its last part. She does not hurry, yet the air feels ready for a completion. I want to speak about forgiveness, she says. There is a kind of forgiveness that is a staircase back to an old room. I do not teach that staircase. There is another kind that is a key you keep in your own pocket. You do not have to use it. But if you choose to, it opens a door not to the past, but to a room where you can stand without flinching. She pauses. The room listens the way a field listens for rain. Sometimes, she says, and the sentence arrives with the stillness that precedes a chord. Being left alone is how you find yourself. The words do not echo. They settle. A woman closes her eyes. Another lifts her chin. The sentence does not remake the world. It remakes the next breath. The workshop ends not with applause, but with movement. The women gather handouts and fold them like maps. They speak to one another in low voices that contain new shapes. Some exchange numbers. Some do not. Emma walks to each woman and thanks her by name. She looks into each face and sees not a story of leaving, but a story of making. When she turns, Sarah is beside her, smiling through eyes that shine. You built something alive, Sarah says. It knows how to grow. Emma feels the truth of this settle in her like a seed that has found the right depth. I did not build it alone, she says. You stood at the first door. They step into the lobby. The glass carries the reflection of the circle now empty, chairs waiting for another hour. Emma sees the man by the window and knows him before she fully knows the outline. Mark does not move toward her. He does not lift a hand. His mouth shapes a small, rueful smile that contains no demand. He bows his head once, as if offering a brief, silent apology to the air. Then he turns and leaves. The door opens, closes, and the library returns to its ordinary blessing. Emma exhales. It is not relief. It is release. She looks toward the children's alcove and finds her daughter waiting at the edge of the rug, crown slightly crooked, hands outstretched. The little girl runs, and Emma kneels, and the two bodies meet with the precision of a promise kept. That evening, the sky lowers itself toward the sea in a long, gold breath. The beach is quiet except for gulls that coast like folded paper and the sound of water making and unmaking its own bright edges. Emma walks at the line where tide writes its brief script and wind erases it with a soft palm. Her daughter holds a shell that sings as all shells do when held to an unafraid ear. Linda and George walk behind them, close enough to help, far enough to let the new shape of the small family draw its own outline. Sarah joins them with a thermos of tea and a blanket in her bag. They sit when the light asks them to sit. The child runs between sky and water, leaving prints that the tide takes as offerings. Emma watches her and feels the old ache turn into a different ache, the kind that reminds a person she is alive. She speaks quietly, a narration meant not for cameras, but for the body that hears the voice of its own courage. There are storms that teach you to read the weather, she says. There are doors that turn a lock you did not know was yours. There are endings that do not punish, but prune. And there are beginnings that arrive with bare branches and still manage to flower. The sun folds itself into the horizon, a coin returned to a pocket. Piano would be the right music here, Emma thinks, a melody that does not hurry, a right hand finding light while the left holds a steady root. The sea provides its own score. The hush and return, the hush and return. A sound bridge between grief and grace. Darkness lifts its first veil. The child leans against Emma's side with a sudden weight that means sleep will come quickly. Emma wraps the blanket around small shoulders and around her own, and together they watch the last line of gold thin to a thread and then to nothing. There is no victory march. There is a quiet procession. The moment passes through them and leaves them changed. On the drive home, the car carries warmth that is more than the heater. The road shines. The towns they pass have their porch lights on, small beacons speaking the same single language. Here, here, here. Emma knows that the work of tomorrow will be ordinary. Diapers. Dishes. Emails. A new lesson plan for the next workshop titled How to Speak When Your Voice Shakes. She smiles because ordinary is the right kind of miracle. At home, after the child is in bed and the rooms have folded themselves into their night shapes, Emma sits at her desk. She writes a final note for those who will find her words in the quiet hours and need a number more than a paragraph. If you or someone you know is facing domestic abuse, call 1-800-799-SAFE or visit thehotline.org. Because silence should never be the price of love. She turns off the lamp. The house breathes. The sea keeps its rhythm somewhere beyond the dark. Emma lies down and closes her eyes. The last sound she hears is a piano she cannot see, playing a melody she now knows by heart. There are moments in life when the ground breaks beneath us, and for a while, all we can do is fall. Yet, sometimes, in that quiet descent, we discover the courage we did not know we own, the kind that whispers instead of shouts, that rebuilds instead of avenges. Emma's story is not only about loss, it is about reclamation. It teaches us that strength does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, it comes in the sound of a mother's breath, steadying herself to begin again. Life has a way of asking us the same question over and over: what will you do with what remains? For Emma, the answer was simple, though never easy. She built something from the fragments, a space where pain could be spoken aloud and turned into purpose. She turned survival into service, heartbreak into human connection. That is the miracle hidden in the ordinary. We rise not because we are untouched, but because we are remade by what once broke us. Maybe you, too, have walked through your own storm. Maybe you carry a silence that has grown too heavy, or a story that trembles at the edge of your throat. If this tale has reached you, let it be a reminder you are not defined by the moments you were left behind, but by the moments you chose to move forward. Healing is not a single act, it is a series of small, brave decisions. To breathe, to speak, to hope again. And as you close this story, I invite you to pause not in sadness, but in recognition. Because somewhere, someone needs to hear what you have learned. Tell your story. Leave a comment below, share what part of Emma's journey spoke to you most deeply, or perhaps, what part of your own journey you are ready to begin. And if these stories of resilience and renewal touch something in you, stay with us. Subscribe, not for the endings, but for the beginnings we create together. In the end, every scar is a map, each line leading us back to the same quiet truth, that love, when it returns, no longer asks to be believed. It proves itself in the way we keep going, in the way we choose to live. And perhaps, that is the most beautiful story of all.